Welcome back. Turning now to the ongoing crisis at the border. Exclusive new reporting from NBC News reveals that more than 500,000 migrants are living in legal limbo right now, released into the United States by Border Patrol without a court date or charging documents. Thousands of those migrants have been also dropped by the U.S.'s tracking program, rendering them untraceable. To say this is a huge problem is an understatement, not just for the Biden administration and the Department of Homeland Security, but for the hundreds of thousands of migrants who are left without a way to follow the legal path towards asylum if they want to do that. Currently, migrants let into the United States have a year to apply for asylum. And if migrants don't apply within that time frame, then they risk deportation. NBC News' Homeland Security correspondent Joya Ainsley joins me now. So, Joya, this is going to talk about alarming those that are worried about the border, who believe we're just letting people in randomly. This is just going to fuel a lot of concern.
Yeah, I mean, there are two ways to look at this, right? I mean, that you could look at it from a national security hawkish perspective, that you've had 800,000 people released into the country without a charging document, and so far only a little over 200,000 of them have court dates now. This began in March of 2021. There's also the humanitarian perspective. If you're someone who's worried about the rights of people fleeing persecution, now these people are coming in, and by the time they find a lawyer who can help them, they've already missed their eligibility deadline. They could have applied before they actually go before a judge, but it's hard for them to manage that system, navigate it, and figure out who they're supposed to make their case to if they're not doing it in court, where it was typically done prior to this administration.
Is this all folks from that first 3 months of basically, I want to say it was a bit chaotic, because you had clearly the changeover in administrations allowed coyotes to say, hey, the doors are going to be open because the rules are changing. And then all of a sudden there was this flood and we had all this. Is this the result of that initial wave?
It's the result. The practice started then, but it hasn't stopped, and now it's getting worse because of funding issues. So if you can remember back March of 2021, it was the first real test for the Biden administration on immigration, because you had all these unaccompanied children staying in Border Patrol stations far past the point they should have. So in order to empty out those stations, they started releasing adults and families with no paperwork, with no charging documents. And so they ended up expanding that policy. It covers the whole border. They still do it because, as you know, the numbers overall have only climbed since then, although the child piece has been taken care of to some extent, fewer unaccompanied children, but they continue to release without charging documents with the expectation that they would eventually get a court date from ICE. But our data that we found shows that is less likely to happen than is likely to happen.
So there have always been all sorts of things. Okay, there'll be monitors, or some people have suggested ankle monitors for this. I think that's
They have used them. Now they use an app. You can check in with your face and your geolocation. But because Republicans are so fed up with Biden's border policies, they don't want to give a dime to anything they're doing. So now they have to drop these people from the tracking program.
No, this is what I feel like the conundrum is. It's like you have Republicans upset about the administration, but the administration can't. They just don't have the. They don't have the tools.
They're tying their hands to really do anything.
They don't, and if they do something, the courts tell them you can't.
Even if it's something that they would give a Republican administration to better secure the border, they're not giving it to the Biden administration until they do more, in their view, to secure the border.
I mean, it's almost like, it almost feels like it's an intentional, an intentional decision.
It could be that it wouldn't be politically savvy for them to give Biden a win at the border. But it is a really tough spot for DHS, but also for these families. And I should point out, this data we're reporting here today, first time it's been released publicly, but Congress gets these numbers. They're aware of this situation. And it's interesting, we're so focused on the border, the numbers every month, we focus so much on that. But now we have a situation because of those numbers where you have all of these people, over 500,000, living in the country, unable to work, unable to claim asylum.
Any evidence that this new Title 42 way is working at all, trying to get people to apply for asylum, say from Guatemala?
Well, it's definitely bringing down the numbers at the border. I was able to speak to Secretary Mayorkas yesterday with a few other reporters. He says there's been a dramatic drop in January from those four countries, Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba.
Right.
There we go. But we'll see. Sometimes there's a dip and then they go back up.
Right. It has been cold, so you never know. Joy Ainsley, great reporting.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.